Thanks to my sponsor, Surfshark VPN, for offering my viewers 85% off and 3 extra months for free. And at the end, I'll talk about how they could help you binge watch the films of this video's director. We all know by now that Martin Scorsese is a fervent cinephile. The history of cinema courses through his veins, and he's not shy about the films that have inspired his work.
It has been a central and revelatory presence in our lives. It's changed our lives.
1976's Taxi Driver was, in my mind, the first time where his mix of influences fully emerged, and his signature aesthetic blossomed. It's been said many times before that the film was a loose remake of John Ford's The Searchers. Like Travis Bickle, John Wayne's Ethan Edwards is a disturbed war veteran, on a mission to save a young girl from men he's repelled by. But on a stylistic level, Ford's influence isn't keenly felt. The veteran director liked to put his actors against dramatic Western vistas, and would often compose static master shots, with actors moving around the frame. He was a painterly, old Hollywood classicist, whereas Scorsese is a fevered modernist, with a vision born out of his fast-paced city life. When reviewing Mean Streets, Pauline Kael said that it was able to achieve the effects of expressionism, but without obvious artifice. Powell and Pressburger are no strangers to artifice, whose more low-key The Small Back Room has shots that are reinterpreted in Taxi Driver. Scorsese's expressionism isn't that of the classic German directors, from where the phrase originated. When F.W. Murnau wanted to represent hell, he didn't hold back. Whereas Scorsese merely exaggerated elements that already existed in the city, like the steam from the sewers, which suggests a hell on earth. He said that he borrowed techniques from horror film directors, like Jacques Tourneur and Mario Bava, for a more realistic context. He's a huge fan of Italian Neorealism, and ultimately stays grounded in reality. But you can see here how he elaborated on shots from a neorealist film, Salvatore Giuliano, and with camera movement, made it more stylized. In Old Hollywood, German Expressionism's influence was most noticeable in film noir. And Taxi Driver has many resemblances to noir, besides just Expressionism. Whether it's Bernard Herrmann's jazz-inflected score, or the first-person voiceover narration.
I was thinking about that dame upstairs and the way she had looked at me.
She appeared like an angel, out of this filthy mess.
Film historians have often seen noir as a genre that came out of a post-World War II anxiety, especially the treacherous femme fatale, which reflected the anxiety men felt about the women that had entered the workplace during the war, emasculating returning veterans.
I'm rotten to the heart. I used you just as you said. That's all you ever meant to me.
I realize now how much she is just like the others, cold and distant.
Like those men, Travis is a veteran of the Vietnam War.
Were you in the army?
Marines.
And has re-entered a society that's become more progressive, both in terms of the hippie free love movement and civil rights. Through the eyes of Travis, Taxi Driver represents an almost reactionary response to those developments, where women's liberation has resulted in child prostitutes, and if they'd stuck to the original script, the pimps would have been black.
Go ahead, have yourself a good time, go ahead.
Taxi Driver may have been directed by Scorsese, but it originally emerged from the tortured psyche of writer Paul Schrader, who had a more austere vision for the film's aesthetic, inspired primarily by Robert Bresson's Pickpocket. That film features a thief who, like Travis, is intensely isolated and methodically obsessive about his sinful practice. Yet Bresson's minimalist style, which Schrader wrote about in his book Transcendental Style in Film, aims for a purer, meditative, and spiritual effect. Schrader thought there was an interesting tension between his original austere intention and Scorsese's expressionism. You could argue this tension is embedded in the material. Travis Bickle's lifestyle is austere.
June 29th. I gotta get in shape now. Too much sitting has ruined my body. Too much abuse has gone on for too long.
He wants to live like the ascetic man of the cloth in Bresson's Diary of a Country Priest, who practices a form of religious austerity in order to enrich his mind. Travis may have this intention, but he only becomes more disturbed as the film goes on, and eventually erupts in a sequence that is expressionistically violent. In Quentin Tarantino's new book, Cinema of Speculation, he talks about how Scorsese, at least publicly, was horrified that audiences got off on that final sequence. Tarantino doesn't buy it, because why else would you make the person he's there to save a child prostitute? It's hard not to root for Travis in that scenario. The film came out amidst a sea of violent vigilante films, like Dirty Harry, Walking Tall, and Death Wish, where a lone gun is determined to clean up the streets, and the audience is supposed to cheer along. And whilst I can see what Tarantino is saying, right before that sequence, Travis attempts to assassinate a politician. He's not a typical vigilante trying to avenge something that happened to him, or right a societal wrong. Anything will do. The violence is a cathartic release Travis is looking for. Taxi Driver is so effective and troubling because it successfully puts us in Travis's shoes. It's a masterclass in audience identification, as we are privy to a disturbed character's mindset. This is something that Alfred Hitchcock did previously with Norman Bates in Psycho, and Scorsese hired Hitchcock's composer Bernard Herrmann to provide a similar chilling score. Although the Hitchcock film he said had the biggest influence, especially in the way it's shot, was The Wrong Man. It's a film about someone who is wrongfully suspected of a crime, which doesn't seem to have a major thematic crossover in Taxi Driver, yet Scorsese was drawn to the way the film created a sense of guilt and paranoia. There are also traces of Rear Window, with the paralysed subjectivity of Jimmy Stewart's character. Instead of being isolated in an apartment, Travis is isolated in his taxicab. He's a passive watcher, who will eventually be drawn into action because of what he sees. There's a sense that everything outside of Travis's cab is like an abstract movie screen, that he's both disconnected from and drawn to. This element of self-consciousness creates a connection with another of the film's major influences, Jean-Luc Godard. There's a blurring of reality in cinema, as Travis play acts like he's imagining himself in a movie, much like Michelle in Breathless. And Scorsese uses the haphazard editing techniques Godard pioneered to show Travis's psychological dislocation, like jump cuts, which allowed him to fragment time and keep the audience off balance, like Travis. There are direct nods to Godard's work too, like this shot of Travis's journal, which is taken from Contempt. And most famously, in 2 or 3 Things I Know About Her, Godard used a coffee cup to conjure up the cosmos, as if it were the Milky Way. Whereas Scorsese converts it into an Alka-Seltzer glass, fizzing away, as a representation of the mania that's bubbling inside of Travis. Before we end, there are a few more influences that I haven't gotten into, whether it's a documentary about David Hockney, directed by Jack Kazan called A Bigger Splash, which Scorsese liked for its objectivity, to provide a contrast to the Hitchcockian subjectivity, because eventually we are supposed to break our identification with Travis. Or Rainer Werner Fassbinder's The Merchant of Four Seasons, which he felt had the kind of unvarnished, brutal honesty he was looking for. And I'm sure there are many, many more that Scorsese himself isn't even conscious of, because when you're as infatuated with cinema as he is, you can't help but absorb everything you see, and have it come out the other side as something bold and new. When I recently rewatched Taxi Driver, I noticed Netflix had it in 4K Ultra HD, as well as some other great Scorsese films. But that's because I live in the UK, and I know most of my viewers don't. And when I use Surfshark VPN, this video sponsor, to change my location to the US, I saw their Scorsese content was much more limited. Except it did have No Direction Home, his great Bob Dylan dog. And then I realised by changing my location to another country, like Canada for example, I had access to even more of his films. Surfshark now has servers in over 100 countries, and they're the first premium commercial VPN to achieve this. Another reason why I use Surfshark is because I write a lot of my videos outside of my home, using public Wi-Fi, which leaves me open to hackers. So the VPN can ensure my data is secure, because masking your IP is an essential way to protect your privacy online. They're currently offering a special deal for the Black Friday and holiday period. So if you use my code DISCARDED, you can get 85% off, plus 3 extra months free. The link is in the description. And Surfshark offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out.